Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikeshendriyatmane Nama Paramahamsaya Purnahaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namaha Nama Hiranya Viryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. Okay, so the topic that we wanted to talk about for the next few sessions, I just want to give you a brief introduction, then get into the specifics, is that we want to touch upon our understanding of Krishna consciousness through the eyes of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur as depicted and as elaborated in Jaiva Dharma. Yeah? What is very significant about Jaiva Dharma, this is a book, is that it was actually completed in 1896, the year of birth of Srila Prabhupada. So it's quite significant. It was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur he made a prophecy in 1875 that there would be a personality who would arrive on the planet who would, in an unrestricted way, travel across the world and spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And at that point in time, there was no concept of airplanes. It was 1875. Nobody knew that an airplane or a jet was possible and one could go jet setting across the world and then preach. But then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur prophecies, he basically said that a personality would arrive, a very special servant of Lord Chaitanya will arrive, and he would, in an unrestricted manner, spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and then very soon, Englishmen, Germans, Russians, and everybody else around the world would be dancing and chanting the holy names of Lord Chaitanya and holy names of Krishna around the world. This was a prophecy. So it so happened that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur completed this in 1896 and Srila Prabhupada appeared. What is very significant about Jaiva Dharma is the fact that we have to understand the mission of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We have to understand the historical context for us to be able to appreciate this. Lord Chaitanya appeared in 1486. And after he appeared in 1486, he was there for 48 years. His manifested pastimes were 48 years. And he spread the mission in those 48 years with Lord Nityananda and then further on. So this entire dialogue and the chapters of Jaiva Dharma are set 100 years after the departure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. From a historical context, there are certain dialogues and conversations between individuals and practitioners of Krishna consciousness, but it is set 100 years after the departure of Mahaprabhu. Now, when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his extraordinary interest in Krishna consciousness was such that he descended from the spiritual sky. He was one of Krishna's personal associates who descended from the spiritual sky, one of Lord Chaitanya's close associates who descended from the spiritual sky to assist in the mission. But his work was extraordinary. What we see as Srila Prabhupada's books as of today, all those books have practically drawn from the work of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and from the works of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. These are two different personalities who have contributed. So they have written in Bengali, they have written in Sanskrit. Srila Prabhupada drew upon all those things for him to be writing his purports. So his basis for his purports came from these two authors. What was very special about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was when he had his pastimes, so when he was born in 1838. When he was born in 1838 in West Bengal to an affluent family, he was not born into a Vaishnava family. It was an affluent family, and he was an intellectual, and he basically was searching. He was a seeker himself. So he practically came in touch with many theologies. He came in touch with many different practices. He basically came in touch with the Buddhism, Nihilism, so many different aspects of it. He studied Islam. He studied Christianity. He went to Bible societies. He went and sat and participated in Christian discussions those days in India, because this was England, it was British India. So he participated in all those discussions. And he had a very interesting task, and it was quite a monumental task in front of him. Between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, between 1486 and 1838, Krishna consciousness as represented and as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was lost. The purity of Krishna consciousness was completely mangled. It was lost and it was hidden, and there was a lot of practice which was done which was completely against the primary teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but it was cloaked in the garb of Vaishnavism. So there were people dressing up like Vaishnavas, but then they were not practicing the purity and the essence of the teachings of Mahaprabhu. As a consequence, a layman who was very sincere could observe that these people were not right. So there was no enthusiasm for them to be able to connect, because they could see that these guys are doing things which are highly inappropriate, they are immoral, they are out of character, but yet they proceed and they wear tilak and they wear the Katimala and they are wearing saffron and they are doing all of these things. So there was a complete contrast which was occurring in that time period between Mahaprabhu's departure and the presence of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It is fascinating that Krishna himself and Balaram can spread a mission, and in a short 300 years, everything can get covered up by material energy. Can you imagine how powerful that is? The entire birth site of Mayapur was completely covered up. It was covered up with jungles, it was completely covered up. No one knew where Mahaprabhu was. There were a few people who had established his birthplace on the other side of the river, and they were collecting money. You see? There's so much going on when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born that you can just imagine that what we see today as Gaudiya Vaishnavism is practically the foundation laid out by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He first he wrote over 100 books, including essays and poems. He was a deputy magistrate with the British government, so he was extraordinarily busy as an individual. It is said that his sleeping schedule, it's interesting for us because we are sadhakas, we are struggling with life, and here was a personality who had 11 children or 13 children, I'm not sure, 11 or 13. Towards the end of his life, or towards the senior years, what he did was, in his house he had a door laid out in his room which was this thick in wood, so that he could sit quietly and chant. Because you can imagine, I was just looking at the kids here and I was remembering that, the circumstances would have been similar. He didn't chase them away, he made a thick door so that he could hide behind the door and do his part. You see, and he had 13 children, 11 children, he was a grahastha, obviously, and then he was employed by the British government, and he was very highly employed, which means that, he had responsibilities which were not normal. It is like an IAS officer in the present times. Those days it was a deputy magistrate. So there were only 2 deputy magistrates in the all of India. He was one of them who was Indian body. Those days everybody else was coveted. It was a very coveted post, and it was all British. It was all Englishmen who used to occupy those posts. Anyway, so he was a very busy individual, and he had this routine where he used to go to bed at 7:30 in the evening, and he used to wake up at 10:30. He used to sleep for 3 hours. Between 10:30 in the night, right through 4 in the morning, he would either be chanting, so he used to chant sometimes 200 rounds. So he would be chanting, pacing back and forth on the corridor of his house, contemplating different philosophies, arguing and counter-arguing, and establishing what is the truth based on Mahaprabhu's teachings. So he used to do that. He used to chant, he used to constantly, go back and forth. So with this extraordinarily busy schedule, at 4 o'clock in the morning, he would take an hour's rest, then he would do some chanting, and then he would then get ready for the day, he would, go through his ablutions, then he would eat breakfast, then he will wait for 1 full hour in the morning. That 1 hour he used to block so that people can come and visit him. He used to give that 1 hour for people to visit, so that people could come and share their woes, more in terms of accepting visitors and being able to talk to them and so on and so forth. Then it is said that as a magistrate, what was phenomenal was what would normally take 3 days for others, he would finish within a gap of 4 hours or 3 hours. So he could cover an enormous amount of caseload and complete everything within 3 hours. Now this is a very important lesson for us in the modern world, because we are all engaging in activity which is not directly connected to Krishna consciousness. So what is the important lesson that is to be learned here is that becoming spiritually powerful allows you to be able to extend and be able to serve beyond one's normal capacity. So his spiritual focus and his focus of being able to serve Krishna gave him power which allowed him to extend himself beyond normal capacity. It was not normal for anybody to sleep 5 hours every night. It was not normal for someone to complete 3 days workload in half a day. And this was, cases. You have to hear cases. You have to offer judgment. He never used to bring things home. He used to write. And in all of this, he had completed 100 books by the time he left his body. Can you imagine? With this kind of a schedule, with so many children to take care of, he had completed 100 books by the time he left. And this was in 1914. The year 1914, he left his body. Between 1910 and 1914, he was in what we call as, Nirjan Bhajan. He was solitary bhajan. He was engaging in solitary bhajan. So what is fascinating is so much was accomplished. Now, during his time, he had to establish Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. How would he establish Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy? He had to establish that the process given by Mahaprabhu was the supreme process, and it was the most bona fide practice in the Yuga. Now that establishment of Mahaprabhu's process, while comparing Mahaprabhu's Yuga Dharma, the Yuga Dharma of Mahaprabhu given by Mahaprabhu and the teachings of Mahaprabhu, that particular teaching was established as supreme in this particular book. He practically took different philosophies. He staged conversations between different people. So there was this Muslim who was coming in. He's a Qazi. He's a religious teacher. He is proposing different principles of what is religion and how one can attain God. And then there is someone who is sitting there, a Vaishnava, arguing with him, saying that is where you're wrong and here's what needs to be done. Here's the conclusion. So this book is entirely filled with various conclusions, and these conclusions themselves have been derived from various practices, ultimately reaching the point that Nama Tattva is supreme and chanting the holy names is supreme. So it's fascinating to see this. Now, why is it that we're bringing this up, and then why are we even enmeshing it with Bhagavad Gita? Because Sri Bhagavad Gita is a universal book. It is universal. You would notice that everyone in India, specifically in India, or anyone who has anything to do with Vedic science or Hinduism, they would take a Bhagavad Gita, they can identify with it. It is their book. They would never say it's a Vaishnava book, they would say it's their book. They can very clearly identify it. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, you have Krishna talking about various modalities. He's talking about Jnana Yoga, he's talking about Karma Yoga, he's talking about Bhakti Yoga, then he is establishing what is supreme, and then he is giving all the confidential principles in the Bhagavad Gita. You see, the Bhagavad Gita and Jaiva Dharma are very closely related. So Jaiva Dharma, in sense, has 40 chapters. The book has 40 chapters. Of these 40 chapters, they have divided it into 4 parts. The first 3 parts are 25 chapters. In other words, the first 25 chapters have become 3 parts. Okay? Some very amazing principles are shared in the first 25 chapters. We will just be touching upon those 25 chapters. The remaining part of the 15 chapters is very confidential and very advanced Krishna consciousness. It touches upon more confidential aspects of it. So we wouldn't be touching upon that. We would just be touching upon the first 25. And then it is very interesting because it goes in the form of a dialogue. It is a dialogue between people. It is like a sage is sitting and he's chanting, and then he is basically being asked questions by the disciple. I'm having this doubt. How did you reach this conclusion? Or someone is sitting in an assembly, they're arguing, and then they're reaching conclusions. So it's like very many conversations that have been packed into one book of many personalities to establish Nama Tattva, to establish the teachings of Mahaprabhu as being supreme. So it's quite interesting to see that it is basically an evolution of understanding which Bhaktivinoda Thakur arrived at. He is basically taking his personal journey, saying, I have gone there and I've explored this philosophy, that philosophy, I have done all of this, and I have finally reached this conclusion that this is what is supreme, and this is Mahaprabhu's teaching. You see? So it's very good for someone who is a practitioner to completely iron out their own doubts and to go very deep and understand as to why is the practice of Mahaprabhu so important, and what is it which is so essential given in the practice of Mahaprabhu. So this is very important. So this is just one book amongst 100. And he had written 100, and his books form the basis of everything else. He was one of the most amazing preachers in our movement. Very, very dynamic. He used to change his name and go and preach in societies where normally other Vaishnavas would not go. You see? Then he has written about it here, about how truths about Mahaprabhu's teachings and Vaishnavism and Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam are being shared with a Muslim. And then a Brahmana who is sitting there, a Brahmana who is born as a Brahmin, is objecting to it. So an argument is coming up as to why there are no caste restrictions. You see how many things are being dealt with in an amazing way, where there are no caste restrictions in Mahaprabhu's movement. There really isn't such thing as only such a person can have it. That is being raised here very dynamically. It is being raised as a conversation where someone is objecting, why are you giving this knowledge? And then there's an argument saying, no, it can be given, and this is the reason why it can be given. You see, this is very special. This way we get to understand the various dynamics and complexities which a preacher can face. If anybody studies it, this is the Falashruti, and I'm going to read the Falashruti, which is very important. Yeah, the Falashruti is basically the fruit of being able to go through. Yeah, the fruit of being able. One moment. The fruit of being, Falashruti is, Phala is fruit, Shruti is, the author normally would leave one verse or two verses right at the end of their work to say that if anyone is adhering to this work and they're taking up this work with sincerity, then they would be able to reach conclusions at the end. This is what they're going to receive. If you do this sincerely, this is what you're going to receive. This is a great blessing which is given by the Acharyas. You see? Huh?
It's a benefit.
It is a benefit. Yeah, basically you do it and then you get that benefit. Exactly. You basically get that benefit. This is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if somebody has not seen them. This is in his later years. This is his image. Yeah, you would have seen him. In the Guru Parampara, he is, after Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, he is this. He is the personality who is. Okay, so in Falashruti, this is what is written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Very critical. By regularly studying this book, Jaiva Dharma, one develops pure devotion. However, by not reading this book, one deprives oneself of the opportunity to tread the path of pure devotion. Reading Jaiva Dharma surely increases one's commitment to Rupa Nuga Bhakti. Rupa Nuga, Anuga means to follow. Rupa, he is referring to Srila Rupa Goswami, who is the predominant Acharya in our line. So basically he is saying that Rupa Nuga Bhakti, if one wants to adhere to it, if you read Jaiva Dharma on a daily basis, then you will develop pure devotion. You see? Then reading Jaiva Dharma surely increases one's commitment to Rupa Nuga Bhakti, the path of Bhakti as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. However, one who refuses to read this book is indeed faithless and devoid of Dharma. The faithful person who makes Jaiva Dharma his life companion and guide will realize without doubt that false prestige, empirical knowledge and fruitive activity are all worthless. He is going to demolish all the distractions one may have while pursuing Krishna consciousness. In this book, very logically, he demolishes our inefficiencies. Very, very dynamically. Such a soul is rewarded with pure devotional service to Sri Krishna, thus remaining eternally absorbed in satisfying Krishna and relishing the unlimited bliss of his seva. It's very important for us to understand, when a blessing of this kind is given in the book, it essentially means the author is lending his blessings to the readers. It's very important. Such a powerful personality, when he is giving a blessing, it means that those blessings are available if someone is sincerely going to take it up. This is perhaps one of the most dynamic and extraordinarily well-written books. This was basically translated from Bengali by one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. He was also a Bengali devotee, but he was born in Calcutta, so he was a local. So it was very well done and it was very well written. So we would want to take this up, and what we want to do is we want to try and accomplish covering the 25 chapters that we want to cover in perhaps 10 sessions. We want to condense it. So I would be taking a condensed form and I would be presenting it. And in that condensed form, we would be going through the essence of what is being shared amongst those chapters. Then we would be probably going through some of the interesting aspects of the dialogue between participants. So we would understand how this goes. So it's a very dynamic presentation. Now, before we begin, we want to talk a little bit about the necessity and understanding of the place of Krishna consciousness versus organized religion. There is organized religion. So you have Hinduism, you have Islam, you have Christianity, you have Buddhism. There are so many different religions which are organized. These are organized religions. We call it Dharma. And basically, any religion has a specific responsibility. The responsibility of religion is to lead one to understand their eternal nature. They have to understand their eternal nature. Yeah, they have to understand their eternal nature, and they also have to be able to understand Krishna. They have to understand the relationship between themselves and Krishna, and they have to understand the specific activities that one can perform in that relationship. So this entire book of Jaiva Dharma touches upon this idea of sambandha, which is the relationship that we have with Krishna. It touches upon abhideya, which is the activity that one performs to develop that relationship. And then finally, prayojana, which touches upon the goal that is attained in such a relationship. Now, any religion has this responsibility. So if one has to take up religion, they have to question themselves as to whether this responsibility, this particular factor is being contributed onto, is it being taken care of in that particular aspect? Is religion allowing you to embark on a journey of self-realization? Or are you going there specifically for the purpose of fulfilling some desires? We could go to the temple, for instance, and then we could basically engage in activity for the purpose of fulfilling desires. Everybody has desires. Krishna talks about it in Bhagavad Gita, right? Where he talks about the fact that whoever approaches me, they approach me for wealth, they approach me because they are in distress, they approach me because they are inquisitive, and there are others who want to attain superior knowledge of me. So he's basically giving you the category of men who approach him. Right? So now what we need to understand is what is religion versus what is our goal in Krishna consciousness. Okay? How many of us here in this assembly belong to the category of having desires of resolving distress, wanting to obtain some kind of opulence? It could be an opulence in terms of wealth, someone who is inquisitive. Let me see a show of hands. Don't be shy. You know what's in your heart. You know what's in your heart as to whether you are basically trying to either remove some distress or basically you're trying to attain something for the sake of comforts. It's one of those.
But Prabhuji, we need minimum peace to...
That is there.
I always...
Well, no, basically that is true. Minimum peace is required, but the point which we are trying to talk about is that even if one is disturbed, one still requires to have a focus. It will also come. That stage will come. That there will be no disturbance even if there is apparent disturbance. The reason for my asking this question is to simply understand where we are. The goal of Krishna consciousness is to ultimately reach the point of anyabhilashita shunyam, jnana karmadi anavratam, anukuliyana Krishna anushilanam, bhakti uttama. Uttama bhakti is given when Krishna recognizes that there is no other desire in the heart. There are no fruitive desires. There is no desire to end suffering. If someone is suffering, there is no desire to end suffering. What is the end of suffering? What is the definition of end of suffering?
Attaining Krishna.
Moksha. Moksha is end of suffering. And the definition of acharyas is you can't even desire moksha. Jnana marga is all about attaining moksha. And our acharyas are saying that if you even have the objective of ending your suffering, then you're not desiring Krishna in a pure way. You see? So even moksha is rejected. And why is it that moksha is rejected by our acharyas?
Because it is a part of bhakti yoga, what we do in a devotional service. So the liberation is already included for this person who is already engaged in the regular service.
Because the process itself, true, the process itself is such that in the beginning one is chanting with many faults. One is chanting the holy names, committing namaparad. When you are committing namaparad, how do we recognize if we are committing namaparad? How does one recognize namaparad?
still differentiate name and named.
That is philosophical. How else? There are more obvious aspects.
They are not progressing consciousness-wise.
Consciousness-wise, one does not know. Someone who is very advanced can still think they are very fallen. How else can you distinguish if you're committing nama prad?
We don't concentrate on the time of chanting.
Concentration is not there. There's distraction. Yes, it's one of the features, but how else will you recognize
We still
nama
have
prad?
desire to enjoy.
Good, because if you still have material desires and you have a propensity to enjoy in this world and you want to be in the center, then being in the center means you want to enjoy being in the center. You want to be the enjoyer and you want to have enjoyment and you have certain aspirations. You have aspirations from a professional standpoint, you may have aspirations from a personal standpoint. All these aspirations which are not directly connected to Krishna consciousness, one should understand that this is basically due to nama prad. This is the 10th offense. What is the 10th offense? Maintaining attachment to material desires even after receiving multiple instructions on the same. This is the 10th offense. If one is still having the 10th offense playing out on a daily basis, one should calibrate themselves and they should understand that I am committing nama prad. You should be very clear. Don't be ambiguous about it, because if you're going to be ambiguous in your diagnosis, you can't fix it. Yeah? You can't really fix your problems if you're going to be ambiguous, if you're not sure. So just be very clear that I am in nama prad because I am committing nama prad. Does it make sense? How do we recognize we are committing nama prad? Don't allow the mind to cheat you. Do not allow the mind to tell you that you're chanting nicely. Examine the heart and see the pull of the senses when you find the objects of the senses. See what you're attracted by in this world. If you are attracted by in this world, if there are vasanas, if they are occupying your mind, they're preoccupying your mind, they're distracting you, understand that there is nama prad. This is nama prad. Clearly this is symptomatic. The day one is able to give up nama prad is when their consciousness rises above the material mode of goodness, which is the higher mode of goodness. They are able to give up nama prad. At that stage they are also liberated. So one who is chanting without offenses is a liberated soul. So for us, we don't even need to attain Krishna. Liberation is given at just the stage where you stop committing offenses. That is why to have this aspiration of liberation is keeping such a low bar of attainment that it is almost impossible for us to go higher if we just keep that. Our business is not to attain liberation because it is given very easily the day we stop offensive chanting. And how do we recognize offensive chanting? We will recognize it. As I mentioned earlier, if we are sincere, we look into the mirror every day in the morning. When you brush your teeth, look into the mirror and say, this is what is running in my mind. Are we waking up and saying that this is my objective? This is what I want in life. Look to see what you want in life. Look to see what you want to accomplish. And you will notice that there are multiple desires that are coming up if you're sincere. Now, we do not want to pick and choose. We don't want to become nitpicky, trying to say this desire is there, that desire is there, let me start working on it. We just want to improve our chanting. If you improve the quality of chanting, then everything else will fall in place. Now let's do one verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which is critical for us to understand where the problems lie for us, because we remain in nama prad. It is essential. And the reason I'm bringing up this verse is because this verse talks about consciousness. And this verse is talking about what can be attained if you improve consciousness. Okay? So, this is chapter 4. We will do chapter 4:10. Please repeat after me. Vitaraga Bhayakroda Manmaya Mam Upashritaha Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Utamadbhavam Agataha. Translation, please repeat after me. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me. Many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me.
became purified by knowledge of me,
and thus they all attain transcendental love for me.
and thus they all attain transcendental love for me.
How many of you observe the three key words that are being given here? I want you to identify this. Attachment, fear, and anger. So tell me, amongst the three modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, which category does attachment fall under?
Passion.
Yes. Because when we are passionate, we become attracted to the objects in the world. When you're passionate, you start doing window shopping in the world, literally. As you walk around, you start desiring this, and you're desiring that, and desiring this, and desiring that. But what is passion, though? What is passion? How many of you feel you're passionate? This is not a wrong question, by the way. It's not a trick question. I'm being very straight. How many of you feel you're passionate? And what is passion, basically?
In one sense, it is to enjoy.
No, but what is passion? What is the drive in passion?
Interest in
Feeling
something.
deeply connected to something.
Feeling deeply. Driven. You see, one needs to, being driven to wanting to achieve. So essentially, you're all in some kind of professional setting, you're trying to achieve some personal goal. Do you need passion or you don't need passion?
Need passion.
So passion is going to be there. If you're going to be in an environment such as a professional environment, and then you have a professional goal of attaining certain values, let us say you want to get promoted, or you want to accomplish a certain project, you want to accomplish it within a certain period of time, and you want to excel in it, it requires passion. Be very clear, it requires passion. You cannot accomplish anything which is complex and resolve anything which is complex without passion. Underline it. Passion is a part of being able to transform. What is the energy which Lord Brahma uses to create this universe? It is passion. Without passion, you cannot create a very complex mechanism such as this universe. With all its intricacies, with all its dynamics, with all kinds of beautiful things that are happening around, even in the material creation, you cannot create without passion. Creation equals passion. You see? What is it which motivates? What is it which is motivated by passion? What do we have in the subtle body? Who can tell me the different parts of the subtle body?
Mind,
Intelligence,
false ego.
false ego. So amongst these three, what is passion dominating? Intelligence. Intelligence, buddhi, is transformative. It requires fire. Have you noticed fire? Fire can take your rice, it can take up your dal, it can take up the different sabjis, the vegetables you put in water, it can take the different masalas you put in, and fire, heat, can transform everything into a dish. Have you seen that? Transformation occurs because of fire. The nature of passion is fire. The nature of intelligence is fire. We say someone is fired up, in achieving certain things. This fire is passion, because this fire allows you to transform. You can take a bar of gold, a bar of silver. So I'm wearing this Narasimhadev ring. This is a piece of silver. Then what allowed this ring to be shaped into Lord Narasimhadev's face?
Fire.
It required fire. And this is passion. You see, the energy of passion is fire. Who gives passion in the world? Who gives passion in the world? No, don't give me general answers. Lord Aniruddha gives spiritual intelligence for us to be able to transform. He is the source of all of this. Lord Pradyumna gives intelligence. But who is it who gives passion? Who gives you passion? We don't worship Lord Brahma. Who gives passion? What is it that you need on a daily basis for you to function?
Energy.
Good. Energy. Thank you. Energy. Who gives you energy?
Food.
Give me something more basic. Who gives you energy? Sun. Lord Surya, his shining, he is the giver of passion. Please understand this. You see, he is the giver of passion. Without energy, he is the original source of energy. What is money? People who are very rich, What is money? Money is nothing but transformative energy. They have energy, that energy is being applied in a certain way, and they're creating wealth. Please understand, it's a very basic principle that people who don't have much energy, much passion, they don't create wealth. Have you noticed it? People who are very passionate and who have intelligence, who go around, they are able to transform things, they create wealth. This is Surya. Basically, the energy of Surya that is being given to us is transformed by us, and we in turn create wealth. Do you understand? So he is the giver of resources in general. This is subtle. He is providing subtle intelligence, and we do it. See, what we also hear about different, varnas. What is the nature of a Kshatriya? What quality does a Kshatriya have?
Passion.
Pure passion. It is not passion. It is pure passion. What quality does a businessman carry? Mixed passion. He has passion mixed with ignorance. He is the third category. What quality does a Brahmana have? Goodness. Does he have passion? No. Okay. And what kind of a life should a Brahmana lead?
Simple life.
Why? It's good answer. The right answer. Why? I need to know why. Why would a Brahmana lead a simple life? Why is it mandatory that if you want to pursue Brahmanical life, it has to be simple? It cannot be complex. Because the moment you have a complex lifestyle, you're going to need passion. And once the Brahmana gets passion, he can't focus on Shastra. Passion and Shastra don't go well together. A mind which is racing like a horse can't focus on Shastra. It cannot. It does not have the transformation. The Agni for spiritual knowledge is very different from the Agni required to execute in this world. So what does a Brahmana need to have? Goodness. Simplicity. Because without simplicity, he can't maintain himself in goodness. There is no sattva if it is complex. Please understand it. The day a Brahmanical person's life becomes complex, he is going to need passion to resolve the complexity. And the moment he takes that passion to resolve his complexity, he leaves the Brahmanical platform. Please understand it. So what is the challenge that we face as ordinary devotees struggling for us to be able to maintain our Krishna consciousness? Why is it that we are struggling? Why is it that there is Namaparad even after so many instructions? Passion. We are in environments filled with passion and ignorance. Because we are in environments filled with passion and ignorance, it do not allow us to be in the platform of goodness. When we are not even in the platform of goodness, what is the chance of us being able to transcend ourselves to use that platform of goodness? Imagine being a worker in a corporation of modern day who refuses to have aspirations of wanting to achieve things. Such a worker is going to disappear. When I started out in Pricewaterhouse, I started with McCary and Pricewaterhouse, they had this system where they used to say that if you don't get promoted within 3 years, you're going to get fired. If you don't have a fire in the belly to get promoted in 3 years, you'll get fired. You see? Why is it so? Because you don't have the drive to achieve things. If you don't have the drive to achieve things, you're not going to be of much use. So a Brahmana, for instance, had to have a very simple setting. And he had a very simple setting. He used to live very simply. He used to go around begging alms. He used to collect what is given to him by others. And through that, he used to just focus on building knowledge because his life was very simple. The king was very passionate. Because the king was very passionate, he was administrating the kingdom. Imagine administrating a kingdom. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine the complexity of administrating an entire kingdom? So what quality would you need for a king? Pure passion. Why pure passion? Because he's focused on Dharma. You see, the king's objective is Dharma. What is the focus of the businessman, the Vaishya? What does he focus on? Artha. It is mixed with passion. So if you're focused on Artha, and if you have aspirations for money, and you're good at making 25 cents into $1, please understand what energy you carry. Then you will know why chanting is difficult. You will also know what aspirations you carry and where Namaparad can come from. It's very, you have to understand this. If you don't understand how the building block of consciousness works, you will not be able to break it down and understand what you need in life. Every devotee needs a retirement plan. they need to disengage at some point. If you can't disengage at some point and focus in goodness, where life becomes simple, where you don't really have to think so much about how to do this, how to do that, then you're not going to be able to chant. Until then, the progress has to be steady. We do the sadhana, we engage our passion in the service of Krishna so that it gets purified and purified and purified and reaches a point where we are completely pure. Is this clear now that attachment comes from passion and we need goodness? And because we don't have that, and attachment comes from passion, when you have passion in you and you're walking in the streets of Madison Avenue or someplace, I'm just giving a name. What is the fashion district in New York where you have window shopping? Wherever, go to a mall, go wherever, wherever you please, wherever things are good for you. If you go to a mall, wherever, and you have passion in you, then you become attracted to what is being sold. I already have a shirt and I have a pant, but this looks good on me, that looks good on me, I want this, I want that, I want to buy this, I want to buy that. I already have this, but I need something more. This is passion, because this passion exists in you and you are window shopping in the world. And when you're window shopping in the world, are you really practicing Anya Bilashita Shunyam? Do you have other Abhilashas? You have this. We don't have it. So please understand where the pitfalls are. We are artificially situated professionally. We are at a distinct disadvantage. I don't want to mince words when I'm saying this. We are at a distinct disadvantage. We are. If you don't have aspirations of being able to disengage at some point, then we would be in trouble. That's why you will notice in history, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Puranas, the kings had delineations. Up to the age of 25, you spend time with your guru. So you're drilled down with all kinds of Shastric knowledge. You really know what is supposed to be done, not supposed to be done. You do not know it in the relative sense, you know it from an absolute sense. You can take a decision saying, this is good for me, based on Shastra. And you will know that indeed is good because you've been taught that. They teach this for 25 years. So he spends time until 25 brahmacharya. Between 25 and 50, grahasthashram. 50, vanaprasth ashram starts. And then those who desire to take on the fourth order of life, they become sannyas. Why is it that they disengaged? They disengaged because they knew that these two things can't sit well together. You can't do two things together. You can't. Some amount of disengagement is required. Some amount of disengagement is required.
Which two things they can't do? They can't pursue very serious bhajan and also exist in the world while engaging in what is required for the world. Because the simplicity required to not think about anything and focus will not come when you have so many machinations and so many different things to do. Unless those things are directly related to Krishna. Yes.
Prabhuji, you mentioned passion is being driven. Don't we need a drive even in our spirituality?
Drive in spirituality will come with taste. The idea of waking up in the morning and chanting as many rounds as you can, that is being driven because you're committed to the spiritual master and you're afraid of breaking those vows. You're not being driven because we have taste. When we are in a higher level of Krishna consciousness, then we're going to be driven by spiritual taste, where there will be real ruchi. A Bhava Bhakta or someone in the higher order of life, they will wake up at 2:30 and they'll jump out of bed with eagerness and grab their beads. They wouldn't even want to do anything. The normal advanced devotee in Vrindavan, other practitioners, serious practitioners, the normal lifestyle is that they wake up at 2 o'clock, they go to bed at 8:30. That's done. 8:30 cut off. You see, many sannyasis do this. And then they go to bed at 8:30 and then they wake up at 2. Because the hours of sleep which you have before 10 o'clock, they are more valuable than the hours of sleep that you have post 10 o'clock. Good sleeping habits means that the 1.5 hours you have before 10 o'clock is worth twice as much. So literally sleep for 3 hours, then you have an extra 4 hours, it gives you a good 7 hours of quality sleep. Then they wake up at 2 o'clock. When they wake up at 2 o'clock, they don't even want to be bothered by wanting to have a shower and bath and so many different things. They do the minimum, cleansing which they need to do to be able to sit and chant after
And then they chant from 2 o'clock to 8 in the morning, 6 hours. 2 to 8 in the morning is chanting. Only after they've completed 64 rounds would they even do anything else. They won't touch anything until then. This is spiritually driven because of taste. It cannot happen with material passion. Material passion, you would not be able to sit still for more than 20 minutes. More than 20 minutes, the attention span will not be there. Why is it that people struggle with lack of attention span? It is passion, because the mind is racing. There are many people who talk to me during the week, and some of them I find this issue. And then I tell them, okay, break down your task into 20-minute segments. Change it. Change 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes, change what you're doing. This way you would be able to be focused and you would be able to accomplish things. Does it make sense that this is basically attachment? Passion means attachment. And our passion is mixed with ignorance. So what is fear? More of ignorance. What is anger? Ignorance. Why is attachment given with fear and anger? Why is Krishna saying attachment, fear and anger?
Attachment leads to fear.
Because we start wanting to enjoy something in this world. We start living that experience even before it comes to us. I need this, I need this, I need this, I can't live without it, I can't live without it, can't live without it. Then you find, as is most cases in this world, that many of our aspirations will not be fulfilled because we don't have the power to get that done. This attachment, which does not deliver results, turns into fear and anger. Fear because they don't want to experience disappointment. Anger because they are disappointed, they are frustrated with life. How many of us feel that way? I'm asking very personal questions. Oh, I have these aspirations. How many of us blame Krishna for their problems? I'm going more direct today. I'm chanting 16 rounds. I come every week and then I do seva in your temple. I hear all kinds of things from so many other devotees when I'm doing seva. I get into so many different complications. Krishna, you're not doing your job. Why is it that my simple desires are not being fulfilled? Krishna is doing his job. He's been doing his job very well. He's very well employed. So this is the issue. Fear and anger come when attachment is not rewarded with results. When the results don't come, we become very, very fearful. Oh, I'm not going to get it, I'm not going to get it. And then we also become angry when we don't get it. We become disappointed, angry, and then we also say this. Yeah? So please understand, as to this is the cycle. If there is attachment, passion, what does it mean? If you have passion, it is just a matter of time before it turns into ignorance. Please understand, if you are in passion, it does not go higher to sattva. It is going to go lower because energy dips lower, lower, lower. Does this make sense to you? That if you have passion, the next stage, ignorance, is just round the corner. 90% of our aspirations won't be rewarded. Our plans may not work because they may not be aligned with the desires of the Atma. The Atma has a plan, we have a plan, that plan may not work. Then what happens? Disappointment comes in. So many cases, mode of ignorance begins. When the mode of ignorance begins, there is no motivation. Then the problems really start. I can't wake up for my chanting. I'm watching certain things because my consciousness has dipped so low that it fits in with Netflix in a very nice way, and I'm able to watch a lot of Netflix movies because my consciousness and Netflix consciousness is on the same level. Yeah, or YouTube, pick your own poison, whatever it is, I don't care. There's so many different varieties of poison. Yeah? Have you noticed that? When your consciousness dips, you're going to pick a channel to vent that consciousness. You're going to pick activity for that consciousness. You're going to eat in a certain way. You're going to entertain yourself in a certain way. You're going to pick friends who support that consciousness in a certain way. This is all about consciousness. So passion, in general, leads to problems because it will start dipping into ignorance in just a matter of whatever time it takes for it to dip into ignorance. What is the solution? We're also talking about it. Let me extend this a bit. Depending on the consciousness of one, there is a certain varna one is supposed to associate themselves with, because then they can expend this energy in a positive way. If they have too much goodness in them, they are very sattvic, they become good Brahminical people, and they are able to perform Brahminical work of advising others, counseling others, and so on. Because a Brahmana has the capacity to see the future. It's innate in them. They can see what can go wrong because they have mode of goodness. It is 100%, that is how it is designed. A mode of goodness person will be able to understand what is going to happen if something is going to go wrong now. They can understand it. They have vision. That's why a spiritual organization like ours needs to have Brahminical leadership. If you don't have Brahminical leadership, then they will not have vision. Without vision, they can't plan, they can't guide the congregation. It's very important. So Brahminical leadership means their sadhana has to be super good for them to be able to guide the congregation. It's very important. Yeah? This is very important for them to be able to do so. Do we understand where this whole sadhana comes from? Brahmana, being a Brahmana means they have vision. Someone who is a businessman does not have vision. They don't. They can't operate with vision because they are in the immediate zone of acting on things which are priorities. Do you understand? They have to act on the immediate priorities because they're in passion and ignorance. They have to act on and execute. They have to do things. They will not have vision. They can't really plan for the future. So you need a Brahminical type of person for them to be able to plan for the future and talk about it and say that this is what can happen and this is what can happen, this can't happen. Do we understand? So this is how goodness, passion, ignorance, and ignorance, they get categorized into the 4 varnas because consciousness is there. What is a Shudra? Let us talk a little bit about Shudra. Because in Kali Yuga, everybody is a Shudra, is what Shastra says. But what is a Shudra? How do you define Shudra? Let's talk psychology. The psychology of a Shudra. What is the psychology of a Shudra?
Sense gratification.
Huh?
Sense enjoyment.
What is a psychology? If you take away eating, sleeping, mating, defending from a Shudra, they will get so agitated they can't function. They can't. They can't take the uncertainty of life. A Shudra requires eating, mating, sleeping, and defending perfectly defined. If we are completely bothered by the process of eating, mating, sleeping, defending, if we are completely bothered about the uncertainties of this world, please understand where we are in terms of consciousness. And there's nothing wrong in being a Shudra, by the way. It's important to recognize our varna. Nothing wrong in being a Shudra, but recognize it. Because if you recognize it, then you will know how to plan for life. You see? A Shudra can't have a Brahminical tendency. A Brahmana can go through all kinds of austerities. Because they are in the mode of goodness, they don't suffer. A Shudra, because they are in the mode of ignorance, will suffer a lot because their senses are more active and in touch with the world and they are steeped in ignorance. Does it make sense? So the great suffering is because there's great attachment and great values and great things which they want. The moment that is not being provided, then they have a problem and it starts dipping down, they suffer a lot. So a Shudra suffers a lot because there's a consciousness issue, because their senses are very active and in touch with the world. A Brahmana can take a lot of uncertainty. The more Brahminical they are, they will take even more uncertainty because for them austerity is fine. Because being in the mode of goodness, they're already happy. And because they're happy, they don't really care about what's happening around them. They're almost, you can say in one sense, complacent about life. Why are they complacent? It is because they don't feel the misery which other classes feel. Someone in passion gets disappointed. Someone in ignorance gets completely devastated if something goes wrong. A Brahmana doesn't have any of those problems because they're already happy. They're in the mode of goodness. If you want to really experience happiness, it is the mode of goodness. Material mode of goodness is also a happy situation. When you talk about peace, mode of goodness, underline it. It is the same thing. There's no difference. Does it make sense? So what is it which is happening with the world? Depending on a propensity which is within us and a consciousness, there are different religions which have already been set up. So there are rules and regulations for different religions. Even within Hinduism, Srila Vyasadeva wrote 18 Puranas. And of those 18 Puranas, he divided them into 3 different modes. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. There are different devatas who are considered supreme in all those Puranas. Why is it so? It is because there are classes of men with different consciousness who would be attracted to that kind of practice, and they would be drawn to purifying themselves through the means of that devata. So if they are deep ignorance, then there is Puranas and there are certain texts which allow them to come out of that ignorance by following the precepts given in the Purana. And once they do that, they have the ability to come out of it and then proceed further. Life is all about a journey. Some of us begin the journey in goodness, some of us begin our journey in ignorance, some of us begin our journey in mixed modes of passion ignorance, some of us begin our journey in pure passion. It is all about being able to eventually progress from where we are to reach the point of goodness and then take off from there. Why is it that Krishna consciousness demands that we wake up in the morning? Why not worship at 12 in the night?
Morning is mood of
In fact, 12 in the night to morning is actually, it's excellent for the purpose of being able to do sadhana as well. That is why people get up, because everybody else is sleeping, so all the energies are calm, and you can almost, very calmly sit and do your chanting. That's why devotees wake up at 2, 1 o'clock in the night, because they find it very easy to chant, because everybody else is sleeping, everybody is calm. So, why is it that Krishna consciousness requires that we wake up in the morning? It's healthy. Yeah, what else?
To properly concentrate on Krishna.
Because the 1.5 hours in the morning, the day is divided. The middle of the day between 10 and 12, it's passion. It's pure passion. You can't really sit at 10 o'clock in the morning to 12 in the afternoon, because you can feel the passion. You can. Then slowly towards the evening, the passion turns slowly, steadily into mode of ignorance. You can literally feel it. Yeah? But then at mid-noon, towards the major body of the day, it's passion. You can't really concentrate. Yeah? So in the early morning time, there is the mode of goodness. So we want to take advantage of the mode of goodness. What is it that we do as the first prayer at 4:30 during Mangalarti? We worship the Guru. Samsara Deva is worship of Guru. If you do Guru Puja, which is the puja that we do to Srila Prabhupada, Shri Guru Charana Padma, that prayer, if you worship Srila Prabhupada with Guru Puja in the morning, you will situate yourself in the mode of goodness. This is a fantastic way to bring the mode of goodness onto our head when we start the day. And if you put things on the head at sunrise, this is a subtle rule. Whatever you do at sunrise, it will stay throughout the day. Please remember this. If you wake up at sunrise, much before that, and you're ready and you're doing Guru Puja at sunrise, the mode of goodness, the lotus feet of Guru will be on your head. Then the mode of goodness exists, and you're able to leverage the mode of goodness towards being able to chant, towards being able to arrange for understanding so many things. Do you see the construct? That if you simply follow what Srila Prabhupada has given us, you would find that everything else will just fall in place. Do you see the construct of why Guru Puja is so important in the morning? Is because technically, yes, we're surrendering to the Guru, but then Guru Puja itself brings you to the sattvic platform, literally, because Guru represents Akash Tattva. The moment you come in touch with Guru, you find this sweetness. There's a certain sweetness. You see, have you heard of the expression that the holy names are sweet? Huh? The holy names are sweet. This is not a metaphorical description. It is not a metaphor. It is not. There is no falsehood in that description. When they say that the holy names are sweet, it's a literal experience. It is literally the case that when you call upon the names of Krishna and Rama in the morning, when you call upon the holy names, if you are chanting close to sattva, even higher than that, the entire mouth will turn into sugar candy. This is a literal experience. It is not a metaphorical description of saying, oh, something is sweet. It's a literal experience. Whatever they write it's literal. Don't cheat yourself thinking that it is not, and it is just an expression. They are not selling us anything. They are not. They are not selling us anything. They are giving you what their experiences are. It will literally turn sweet, like sugar candy. This tattva is Vishnu tattva. This is also the Akash tattva. This is also Guru tattva. It can turn your mouth into sugar candy. You see? This is goodness. Sattva is very sweet. it's very peaceful. And as a consequence, someone is very happy if they're situated in sattva. Yeah? And they have no challenges whatsoever. Does it make sense now as to what is being said? So what is it all about? Krishna is basically saying that if you are able to resolve attachment, passion, if you're able to resolve fear and anger, so he's basically saying if you can throw all this garbage out, you will be in the mode of goodness. If it is completely free, which means it is above all of this in the spiritual sky. In the material sky, it's mixed. You know, you can make a good pot of kheer, and then there would be a couple of grains of sand in it. That is goodness in the material sky. There would be some problem in the kheer. But the same kheer in the spiritual sky will not have the grains of sand. So it's pure kheer, very tasty. So Krishna is saying, if you can throw out the grains of sand, of attachment, fear and anger, and then you'll be able to drink the sweetness of kheer, you will then know me. Because for you to know me and develop a relationship, you have to go above all of this. So where do we start? We start with coming to the mode of goodness. We start with establishing practices which bring us more and more goodness into our lives. That's why the food habits of a sadhaka is very different from the food habits of perhaps a kshatriya. Kshatriya food is supposed to be very passionate. If someone is very passionate, they're going to like a lot of hot stuff, yeah? Spice, chilies. They're going to like it. Sattvic food means the person's internals have changed. They're trying to eat something sattvic. There are many, many Westerners who can't take chili, so let's not classify them as sattvic. Yeah? Don't make the mistake of classifying non-Indians as sattvic just because they can't eat chili. They like to eat things which we wouldn't touch, even if you like. Yeah, you can't, so don't just make the classification that if you eat chili and, versus non-chili. Now do you understand this? Now do you understand how intricately there are so many things that are tied in? Our profession is tied into consciousness. Our desires are tied into consciousness. Everything is tied into consciousness, and ultimately we would want to change that. And the change has to occur through sadhana. And there are specific aspects of sadhana and specific times, and that allows us to dynamically move towards it. You see? So coming in touch with it. Does it make sense now? Yeah? So religion is also, the different flavors of religion is based on the different flavors of the modes of nature. Depending on what is predominating one, they will get attracted to that. And if they follow it sincerely, they have an ability to move forward. That is the reason why Srila Vyasadeva wrote for example, in Skanda Purana. Skanda Purana is one of the 18 Puranas. Srila Vyasadeva would write that Lord Skanda, which is Kartikeya, the son of Lord Shiva, is supreme. So for the practitioner who is following the precepts of Skanda Purana, Lord Skanda is supreme. Linga Purana, Lord Shiva is supreme. So every deity there is supreme based on that person's perspective and being able to attain it. Then there is Vishnu Puran. Then there is, there are so many different Puranas. The point which we're trying to talk about is religion is arranged in such a way that one is able to get their plate of religion based on what they like. It's a matter of taste. Spirituality, Krishna consciousness is such that it is universal. You come in touch, and then you start the journey, and then you slowly, steadily reach the platform of being able to fully embrace it. You can start anywhere. Anybody can start. Anybody can start. Now, do we know? The answer is as follows. That is why some of us struggle, and some of us don't struggle. Do we understand? Because the starting point is different. Some of us are in a certain level of consciousness, we struggle. Some of us have done this before in previous lifetimes. We carry spiritual credits, and in this lifetime we are going to consolidate and take off. Some of us are just beginning in this lifetime, so we struggle because the journey has just begun. Do we understand? It's a matter of where we are on the road as well. So this is an important verse because this verse talks about delineation based on consciousness. Jaiva Dharma is also going to talk about different people being attracted to different things, and ultimately the prescription of Mahaprabhu's movement is being given, and arguments are being established as to why it is supreme. Okay, so I'll stop here and then I'll see if you have any questions or comments before we conclude. Yes, Prabhu. 4.10. I was talking about 4.10 Bhagavad Gita. Vitaragabhaya Krodha. 410. I was talking about 410 to establish the different flavors that are available and what Krishna is talking about. To attain Him, which is Krishna consciousness, is all about attaining Him and being able to deal with Him. He says you can't be in passion, you can't be in mixed modes of ignorance and passion, you have to be in and above even the material mode of goodness, then you will understand me. And until then, there will be a little bit of confusion. Any other question? Yes.
In this verse it says attachment is not good, but there is also attachment needed. In Bhakti it is so focused. Attachment to Guru, attachment to holy name, attachment to holy Dham. So how do we make transition while practicing? We cannot just ignore our attachment to the enemy. While staying in the material modes, like
I understand.
we really encourage.
Well, basically, I can give you an example. In the beginning, while we are practicing Krishna consciousness, our awareness is very low. Let's assume that we are mostly in ignorance of many things. And sometimes you would notice this. We might spend 2-3 hours cooking wonderful kheer because Guru Maharaj is coming. I'm talking about whoever your respective guru is. You cooked kheer. You took a lot of trouble. You put the best ingredients. You went to the market. You knew he likes kheer, so you cooked kheer. You spent 2-3 hours. You cooked kheer. You were ready. You kept it in the refrigerator. He likes it cold. You figured everything out about how he's going to be given. Then Guru Maharaj comes and sits down, and he says, "I want a cup of water because I'm thirsty." In your mind, you start thinking, I spent so much time making kheer. Guru Maharaj, why don't you have kheer? No, I just want water. I'm thirsty. Now I made kheer. It's in the refrigerator. So please, can you have kheer? Because I made it. What's wrong with you having kheer? It can quench your thirst. He says, no, I just want water. Now I have kheer. I'm going to give you kheer. So when we start out with Krishna consciousness, we engage in activity which we can do without understanding the actual desires of the Guru and His Lord. They accept it and purify us of our propensity of wanting to do things so that we become closer to them. It is very magnanimous of Krishna. They accept everything. But when our chanting becomes very serious and we understand who we are and we understand Krishna, then we would want to give Him what He really needs, because our hearing capacity of what is required by Krishna and Guru within our hearts becomes very well refined. Then we are able to move forward. So the initial times, engage your passion in doing what you want to do, but Krishna gets involved. It is accepted by the Lord, by Guru, as a means of purification. But ultimately, we want to reach a position of wanting to really understand what they want and what they need, so that we could serve them nicely. That is done only when one falls in love. In the initial part of Krishna consciousness, the contract is simply a contract of, I would say, forced labor. It is forced labor because we all complain about services, don't we? We complain about chanting, we complain about services, we complain about everything. Don't we all? At some point, if you don't do it once a day, maybe once a week, maybe it does happen. Yeah? So the point is, the forced labor is vidhi, because there are rules and regulations, you have taken commitments and you're acting according to it. Then love develops, and one falls in love, then one understands the mood of the person, the beloved, and wants to serve them based on their intentions and their desires. That is our ultimate goal. So the transition can happen. So there's nothing wrong to start out with passion, engage that passion in the service of Krishna, but always keeping in mind that this is our deal. Yeah, not thinking that this is what they literally want, because we can be very confused in the early stages. Yeah, one can't really understand unless there's a relationship. Yes.
So,
not sometimes. Even after 17, 16 rounds of and following regulative principles, still our desires are not where what it should be. The reason is Namaprad.
It is always namaprad. It is also a matter of not being able to cry out for it. There has to be lobha. There has to be greed. Without greed, one doesn't obtain anything in this life. When most of us were in India, we had plans to come here. It was an agitation of the mind. I want to go to the States to study. I want to go there for this, and I want to go there for my job, whatsoever. We landed here because that aspiration was there, it was fulfilled. There was this greed, there was this drive of wanting to achieve it. So then there is this drive of wanting to do certain things in a certain way in this world. There are so many things which are driven by just pure drive. The point I'm trying to make here is that one needs to be greedy for it. This greed is a quality that would come as we make progress.
Sometimes there is if someone has greed but do not have capacity to meet that. I mean, if for example, if someone has greed, I want to do this, but there are only 24 hours, and then we think that, oh no, I can't manage that much. But desire is there. And every day is passing. So what should we do?
Sometimes life can feel that way, where we might feel stuck in some kind of a vacuum. It doesn't quite mean that we are not making progress. It simply means that you can't perceive the progress. You might feel as if you're stuck in some kind of a quicksand where you keep repeating. It's like being on a treadmill. You really don't know. You're not making any distance. You're not covering any distance. You're again and again doing the same thing day in and day out. But it doesn't mean we're not making progress. So when we are stuck in such a way, we offer prayers to the Acharyas, we offer prayers to Srila Prabhupada, begging them to release us from this position. If our prayers are truly sincere, then we would be released from such a thing. So there's nothing to worry about if you're stuck, because being stuck can give you realizations as long as you constantly monitor your desires. You have to monitor your desires. Yeah? You have to monitor your desires. Yes?
When you were discussing that a Brahmana being in the mode of goodness will be able to see the future, but the other Varnas wouldn't be able to see. Being a Shudra, like I wouldn't be able to see my future, so how do I plan for it?
You should take shelter of a Brahmana, which is what society does. And when I use the word Brahmana, I'm not talking about someone who is born in a Brahminical family. I'm not talking about someone who is born in a community of Brahmanas. I'm talking about someone who has the quality of a Brahmana. Someone who has vision. You see? Vision requires the mode of goodness. Passion makes you focus on the present. The future, actually. Passion makes you focus on what is not happening. People who are passionate are very anxious people. Have you noticed? Anxiety is the result of passion. They're very anxious. If someone is suffering from anxiety attacks, it is literally a focus on the future of something either not happening or happening. They're worried. Depression literally is a focus on the past. I'm talking about psychotic disorders. They are basically in the mode of ignorance or mode of passion. It's one of those. When the passion becomes completely out of control, then they have issues with anxiety disorders. They're too anxious, and they're doing things which are not proper. So the point I'm trying to make is the mode of goodness allows the Brahmana to remain in the present. They are not in the past, they are not in the future, they are remaining in the present. They have clear vision of the future as well. It allows them to plan. Yes. Does it make sense? Yeah. So if you don't have the ability, then you seek help from those who have ability, which is the function of society. Society has varnas. That is why we seek help from whom we believe has that capacity to guide us. Yeah? That is how it works. It's a support system. Everybody contributes in their different propensities. So the Lord, for instance, talks about the Brahmana being the head, and the arms being the Kshatriya, and then the belly being the Vaishya, who has the capacity to transform and then distribute resources across the board, and then the feet being Shudra, because you have to do the labor. Yeah? So this is basically, everybody requires all of these. You can't function without different elements of society. But you do need the head to guide you. So one has to realize that if they don't have the capacity, then they approach someone who has the capacity. Which is why society those days was created in such a way. So they allowed the Brahmana to remain in Sattva. So he was not going to be anxious. They had a simplified lifestyle. The simplified lifestyle was supported by the donations and the alms which were given by the rest of the Varnas. This allowed the Brahmana to remain in goodness and give all, suggestions and guidance. When that stopped, the economic disorders started in society because of industrialization. Then the Varnas collapsed and everybody became a Shudra. Yeah? So people who have Brahmanical propensity, they play the role of advisors. So you do find Brahmanas who are advisors, judges, for example, or lawyers and so on. These are all Brahmanical professions because they have to assimilate and gather a tremendous amount of information and then represent it and take decisions based on that data. It's Brahmanical. Yes, Prabhu.
How can we identify Brahmanas?
The best way for us as Vaishnavas to identify is those who are very steady in their Krishna consciousness. Our parameter of success is all about sadhana. If someone is able to fix themselves in sadhana, then they have the capacity to assist us. It's very simple. We don't want to put any other parameter or variable into judging this because we could be very wrong in judging it. You understand? Because a parameter of success can't be external. It has to be that what is most important for us as Vaishnavas is sadhana. Then you go after people who have very good sadhana because then they are in touch with reality. Then they can guide us. That's how you do it. Yes?
Like, according to the Shastra, that Janmana Jayate Shudra. By birth, everybody
Yes.
is a Shudra.
Yes.
And unless they're born into the proper samskara, he cannot become a Brahmana. So, I heard in Srimad Bhagavatam there are 11 qualities itself has been designated for a Shudra to consider. So, the current in the society, the people who are living, those are not samskara. Those are not taken the samskara. Whether they are Shudras or they are considered to be lower than the Shudras.
They're considered to be lower than the Shudras.
So means they are Chandalas kind of?
No, they are lower than the Shudras because they are not come into the Varnashrama system. You see, there are two definitions of Shastra. Number one, you either follow Varnashrama system or you follow Bhakti Yoga. So once you come into Bhakti Yoga and you're chanting the holy names and you're serving Krishna and you're serving the devotees, then this whole consideration of Brahmana, Shudra and Samskaras, it goes out of the window. See, that is a distinction that we're going to see in Jaiva Dharma. We are going to distinguish and see what is the application of Varnashrama versus Vaishnava Dharma. Where is it the Varnashrama can fall short? You see? We're going to see that further down.
But for my understanding, like a person, nobody can escape from Varnashrama system because even the person who is not, as a Shudra not to be considered, he is married and somehow is in a Grihastha ashrama. But maybe he is not aware that he is into a particular ashrama. Then in that way, how can we identify him?
There is no doubt that different people based on their propensity and their occupation can be classified in different Varna and Ashrama.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. But our point very clearly is not so much concerned with identifying the different Varnas.
It has to do with our function of Krishna consciousness. We simply have to identify Vaishnavas. And Vaishnavas can be Shudras, Vaishnavas can be Vaishyas, Vaishnavas can be Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. They can have occupations which are not generally Brahmanical. Arjuna was a Kshatriya. Bhishma Dev was a pure Kshatriya. The passion which they had was required for them to administrate and even to fight on the battlefield. You need passion. Passion is all about, it requires that. So the point I'm trying to make is, there is a distinction that we have to make between Varnashram and Vaishnava Dharma. We will have to understand it. Vaishnava Dharma begins when Varnashram ends. Vaishnava Dharma begins when Varnashram ends. In what sense? A Shudra who is a Vaishnava, who is chanting the holy names and who has adhered to the principles given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very sincerely, is far superior to a Brahmana who is not. Does it make sense? So it's very simple for us. The distinction is that our delineation is based on our principles. When we define and call someone a sadhu, Shastra says a sadhu is one who has completely depended himself on the holy names. This is the definition given in Harinam Chintamani by Srila Haridas Thakur, that you have to completely depend on the holy names for you to be a sadhu. So we use that definition. We have to take shelter, and we start talking about sadhu sangha. We are not going to define varnashram. We are going to define that principle of taking shelter of the holy names. Yeah? So this understanding of varnashram is important for us to understand our propensities so that we could engage ourselves in service. But this does not quite mean it qualifies us, or this is not a disqualification. Being a Shudra Vaishnava is not a disqualification. You can be a very advanced Shudra Vaishnava compared to someone who is a neophyte Brahmana Vaishnava. Does it make sense? So you can have devotees. In Chaitanya Charitamrita you find so many classes of devotees. This is very exemplary. You have someone who is basically preparing, plantain leaves, Sridhar, Kolavecha Sridhar. Great devotee. Mahaprabhu basically wanted to drink water from the pot that he used to do to take it to the fields, He was like that. So Mahaprabhu was so attached to him because of his purity. He was basically the person who was making those banana leaves, taking the different banana leaves and making a bigger banana leaf for eating. You see, that was there. There were Brahmanas who offended the devotees, and they caught all kinds of diseases and all kinds of complications that we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Our Namacharya, whose name and prayers offered to him are so potent when you want to chant, if you're sincere, if you offer prayers to Srila Haridas Thakur, they are so potent that he immediately comes to the aid of whoever is sincere in helping us to chant. What was his origin? He was a Muslim. He was a Muslim. He was not even a part of the Varnashram. He was outside the Varnashram. But he is our authority in chanting the holy names. Yeah. So our point which I'm trying to make here is that there is Varnashram and there is Vaishnava Dharma. These are two different distinct things. We want to follow the Vaishnava principles of understanding who is superior and who is not. Not Varnashram definitions. Varnashram definitions are useful in understanding psychology, in understanding how we should operate. So if we consider ourselves a Brahmana in terms of propensity, we need to find a Brahmanical profession so that we are comfortable and we are natural in our surroundings. If you're Kshatriya, find a Kshatriya, so that there is no misfit. Then there is this energy which is going all over the place and ruining everything. That is the whole point. Does it make sense? What's your name, Prabhu?
Haridas Das.
So now you know what I said. You understand it. Very good. Just worshipping and calling upon and requesting Him before you chant the holy names, that can make a huge difference in your chanting just by calling upon the blessings of the Namacharya. It is not ordinary. It can make a huge difference. Just calling upon Him, requesting Him to help. You can even take the Harinam Chintamani book and then offer prayers. Because Mahaprabhu has said this in Harinam Chintamani. He has said that you have the authority to give mercy. As a consequence, when one calls upon Haridas Thakur, they get mercy and then you're able to chant. Yes, Prabhu?
He is a freshly imported full Yajna Brahmana from Hyderabad.
freshly imported.
Freshly imported, fully qualified Yajna Brahmana from Hyderabad.
That's fantastic. So he has double qualifications of being a Vaishnava and a Brahmana.
I think Saturday or Sunday in the temple.
I'm sorry?
He gives classes in the mornings on
Fantastic.
temple.
I'm happy to hear
And
that.
He does full Yajna in the temple. You know, like I saw him maybe a month or 2 months.
Very nice, very nice. So there, the complexity of the yajna so shows he has a complex mind of a Brahmana, so he can adjust to it. Yeah. So which is yes, Prabhu.
When we are talking about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I have like in the Navadipada Mahatya, we know there is an incident took place where Ramanujacharya has visited Jagannath Puri, and the series of incidents like he wanted to change the system of worship there according to Pancharatra, because the Pancharatra system was not followed there because they are tribals. They were doing that kind of worship because they have love for Jagannath. So after that, when Jagannath heard and he moved, the lordships have moved, to Ramanujacharya to Kurma Kshetra. Before that, Lord Jagannath has instructed just go to Mayapur and have the darshan of Mahaprabhu because I am going to appear there. How did Bhaktivinoda Thakur has recorded this pastime in the Navadipada Mahatya? Why not the previous acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Rupa Goswami or any of those acharyas? But why specifically Bhaktivinoda Thakur has specifically recorded this pastime, and this has become a controversy on the other side of Vaishnavism, like Sri Vaishnavas. Basically, I say this is a controversy because they accept the truth when Ramanujacharya has visited Jagannath Puri. That till they accept, but when they don't accept that Ramanujacharya alone went to Mayapur and had the darshan of Mahaprabhu. So how could we understand this?
This particular thing about Bhaktivinoda Thakur not writing about it and expounding it. It depends on what matters here is a matter of commission. Commission meaning every one of our acharyas had a specific function to perform. So for example, you had Srila Rupa Goswami expanding on the Rasika literature. So the very great details of all kinds of Rasa Tattva was expounded by Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur touched upon it in a more confidential way. He took things from Srila Rupa Goswami and expanded on it. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commission was very different. He had to re-establish our entire system again. And as a consequence, he had the ability to understand and arrive at conclusions which covered the four Vaishnava philosophies, bona fide philosophies. He had the ability to understand how the impact of Vaishnavism would be, Mahaprabhu's movement would be in the context of Judeo-Christian beliefs. He had the idea of being able to dismember and take away things. So he was in that sense very, very special in being able to offer us an additional piece of information. It is not surprising. Even in the Sri Vaishnava line, you notice that Srila Ramanujacharya's work was expanded by Vedanta Desikan. You see? And when he expanded it, he didn't so much focus on aspects which were covered by Ramanujacharya. He touched upon it in the northern style. He touched upon it with Sanskrit. His work is predominantly Sanskritized. It is not Tamil. Yeah? So he did an offering which was more refined in certain ways. Not refined, I wouldn't use the word refined. I would say it was an extension of the work of Srila Ramanujacharya. It was an extension. Now then, there were certain aspects of what he offered which were more than what you can say which Ramanujacharya offered in terms of writings. There was a lot of work which was done by Vedanta Desikan which was even broader in terms of the offering. You see, that is how the two sects within Sri Vaishnavism split between Vedanta Desikan's teachings and Ramanujacharya's teachings. So the point which we want to make here is that when an Acharya descends, they have their commission to establish truth. And they receive realizations based on that commission. You see? And they offer it. So for example, was Lord Jesus Christ, was he a guru? Absolutely. Was he a Vaishnava? Absolutely. Because you would notice that very serious practitioners of Christianity, the saints, have had the
Madhurya conceptions of connecting with God, which is far beyond the writings of the Bible. So they received information which was even far beyond the writings of the Bible. You would notice it. You can even notice a lot of, I would say, I wouldn't use the word similarity, I would say a lot of extraction of Srila Rupa Goswami's work in Sufi Islam. You would be quite amazed to take where they take reference from our work. You see, Sufi Islam has those things, the dancing and the chanting, and then there are so many different things which they do, which they take from our work, and they've expounded it. The point I'm trying to make is, when Lord Jesus Christ spoke his teachings and gave very simplified teachings, it does not mean that he wasn't a PhD in Vaishnavism. He was more than a PhD in Vaishnavism. But he gave information according to the needs of the population at that point in time, and he presented it in a certain way. In a similar fashion, our acharyas, when they come, they all come with very specific functions and presentation, which we noticed even with our Goswamis. Sanatana Goswami had a specific portfolio to offer. Srila Jaiva Goswami had his own portfolio to offer. Then you had Srila Rupa Goswami, his portfolio. Mahaprabhu divided it in so many different ways. So what I'm trying to say is, information being made available to Bhaktivinoda Thakur is not a surprise, because his commission to re-establish our Vaishnavism required that at that point in time. He had to touch upon, because he had vision. He could see the Sri Vaishnavas of the future chanting the holy names and dancing under the banner of Mahaprabhu. Yeah, he could see that.
Yes.
This vision was available. You see? So this was facilitating it. I come from a Sri Vaishnava background. Yeah, so I am very familiar with what the teachings are. But in reality, my inspiration in Vaishnavism started when I came in touch with Srila Prabhupada's movement. So I became more and more inspired. So there is this particular aspect of me where I'm very comfortable in those surroundings because I understand what they're doing. But how did I even know the teachings of Srila Ramanujacharya? It was because of Srila Prabhupada. You see? So for me to embrace this concept that you're talking about is very easy today. But those days, the division was very clear that there were Sri Vaishnavas, and then there were Madhvas, and then there were, Vishnu Swami's followers, and, so on and so forth. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, expanding on it, what I'm trying to say is, it is not a surprise. He doesn't have to repeat things. He can give new information. Because he's like a Sampradaya Acharya in his own right. Yeah, he was able to offer it. Does it make sense to you, Prabhu, that he had access to it?
Yeah.
It is not a logical aspect, but it has to be understood from the perspective that he was dealing with an audience which is much broader than the previous acharyas.
Why we understand that? Because the acharya has the divine vision to experience the Leela.
Truth, yeah.
But again, it's up to them how they receive it and how they accept it again.
True.
That is what I believe.
No, sorry?
That is what I believe, because the person who made that controversy that this Leela had not happened because an Acharya, it is like a cooked story that Ramanujacharya has to have the darshan of Mahaprabhu, and it is them. It is like they're thinking that this is a fabricated
story. Well, basically, in Mahaprabhu's time, in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's time, there were entire groups of very bona fide practitioners of Vaishnavism who didn't accept the existence of Srimati Radharani. Isn't it? It had to be established, and we had to have our own commentary on the sutras by Baladev Vidyabhushan Prabhu. So all of this, what I'm trying to say is basically, it is not a surprise. The followers can be very limited in their understanding. Yeah. They can be limited in their understanding. So controversies arise when they are limited. My spiritual master, he used to speak in a lot of interfaith gatherings. And he made a statement which was very profound. Interfaith is all about having deep faith. If your faith is not deep, you can't understand other people's faith. So, that's the answer, you see. So if our own depth is limited in our Siddhanta, we can't connect with the work of other acharyas. If our depth in our Siddhanta has gone to the extent where we have reached as much as we can, and we have consumed it, then we are fully able to appreciate the work of everybody and their connection to God. You see, which is what the Uttama Adhikari is all about, where they're seeing Krishna everywhere practically. You know, they're not distracted. They're seeing Krishna everywhere. They're not saying that you want to deviate. They see this person is following something. They're saying, "Yeah, you're following Krishna. You're following Krishna. I can see it." Which is the conception of having deep faith, so that you can have an interfaith dialogue. So, I think we've gone too long. I expected this, but it is all your fault because you all came quite late. Yeah? So, I'm very sorry that we went longer than usual. So, we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki.